Hey everybody, Rachel here from Rachthestamper.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make a little out-of-the-box card. I actually made this for one of my son's friends for his birthday. He loves the Beatles, so I actually created a card that was inspired. I did find it on someone's blog. It's a really old blog that's not active any longer, but she did it as a submarine, but I kind of turned it into a yellow submarine card. And then from the Itty Bitty Birthdays, I used they say it's your birthday because how much more Beatles can you get than that? I also did decorate the inside with a few stamp sets that are retired. You may still have Country Livin' because this just ended recently. So I used the guitar, and then this was from Celebration. I used the electric guitar, and then I also used the headphones just to decorate the inside of the card. So I'm going to show you what I did with that. And it was quite simple. So there are a few things you're going to need. So this is actually just the other side of a, it starts with art. And what I did was I kind of wanted like a water-ish looking background. So I kind of thought this looked slightly like water. And I have the second largest stitched rectangle I'm going to use to cut this out. I have a scrap piece of, what is this that I decided on? Daffodil Delight. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually cut out 2 ovals, and this is the second largest of the layering ovals. So we're going to cut 2 out of this, and then just a smaller piece. I believe this is the second smallest oval. We're going to cut one out for that. We also need a couple little pieces of scrap. So I have some black scrap. I also have the 3/4 inch circle punch, which could potentially be a retired product as well. But I keep almost all of my punches because I know a lot of people have it. So if you have a 3/4 inch punch, you really just need half. So if you have something that punches a half circle, it doesn't necessarily need to be 3/4. You could do it a little bit larger or smaller. And then the other thing I have, and this is definitely retired, this was the 3 hearts punch. I used the smallest heart, but if you have any heart punch that's relatively small, I know a lot of the punches we have hearts in them. So this was kind of just to decorate. So this one, you could make this as big or small as you wanted, but you definitely want it to be smaller, the heart to be smaller than the circle. So just make sure if you pick a heart that you make sure that whatever circle you decide to use is a little bit larger. So to get started, what we're going to do is I'm going to just do a little bit of cutting with the Big Shot, and I'm going to pull. Also, one other thing, just to let you know, you want to have ahead of time. You do want to have a piercing mat because I did pierce some holes in this. This was a suggestion that she had because it kind of makes it look like rivets on a submarine. So that was pretty neat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut some ovals, and then I'm going to cut 2 ovals. And then I'm going to cut the 3rd smaller oval, and then we'll just run the rectangle through. So, and again, you can kind of go to the edge with this because you can certainly conserve paper. I did it originally on scraps. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut 2 of these, and then one is going to kind of layer over top of the other one. So we're technically, you could use, I actually did use a smaller piece the last time when I did it. So I used the ovals that were one size smaller than the other one. So you can do that if you want, it doesn't matter. But I found that when I cut it, it layered up nicer looking on the same size oval. So that's why I went back. And then for this smaller oval, what I did was I kind of just lined it up because we're just using this as like the top part of the submarine. So this really doesn't have to be a full oval, but I'm going to say at least do it so it's half. That way you can always trim it down or like slide it down and adhere it if you needed to. So that is the oval. So then we're going to have this piece here. And last but not least, we're going to take, again, this is it starts with art. So I just kind of took the paper and put it to the edge because we really just want a layering rectangle. And I'm going to show you this one this side because I just want to make sure to remind you of this just in case you don't know. You don't want to put these through straight because it is a lot of pressure on these framelits, thinlits, dies, whatever it is you want to call them. So what I tend to do is kind of put it through like a little catty corner and just make sure that the paper stays on the inside. So just run this through. And then you could, let me move this out of the way and I'm going to show you what I mean. So this kind of just depends on how into saving paper you are. So you could if you wanted to, because you are going to cover the center of this up with the submarine. You could punch your circle out from the center, but since I have this little piece left over, what I did was I just kind of slid these in and punched out a little heart. I did 3. I think the odd numbers look a little bit nicer, but you could do 2 if you wanted to, or if you're afraid you're gonna cut it off. So I have 3 hearts, and then I'll just get rid of the rest of this piece. I could save that if I wanted to put it on the inside or something. You are going to need a Whisper White panel for the inside. And then the other thing I did is I just took my snips and I cut, this is just one of the strips that if you were to cut your cardstock into quarter panels, this is just a strip that's left over from that. So I cut it originally in half, but in half was actually even a little too thick. So I just kind of cut a piece. It doesn't need to be this long, and you'll find that you're going to make it shorter, but it's probably better to have it a little bit longer if possible. So there's that. And then I took my circle punch and I just put it in like about halfway. Actually nipped that ahead of time, but it's just about halfway, and that's just to make your periscope part. So you can jazz that up a little bit if you wanted to. That's pretty much it, but I do need, I thought I had it out, but I did not. So I'm going to grab just a piece of black because I do need to punch just 3 little circles. So I'm just going to do 3 circle punches. Again, this was the 3/4 inch. You could use smaller. If you have a smaller heart, will work perfectly fine as well. Okay, so what you're going to do, so I have all these pieces. There's the hearts. I'm going to put this on the side. These 2, technically we're going to layer it onto this, so you don't really need the whole thing, but might as well since you're at it. And then one other thing I'm going to tell you is, so I went ahead with Mango Melody, and I'm going to do this ahead of time. And if I can kind of find a clean spot on my sponge, I just sponged the edge of this, the whole thing. And then once you cut the one part, you can sponge that as well. Okay, I did not sponge this one because we're going to layer on top of it, but I did sponge the second part. And I kind of just sponged the whole thing. I think it gave it a lot of, a little bit of more of a depth 3D feeling to it. So that's pretty good right there. I'm going to keep this out because when I cut this part here, we're going to sponge again a little bit. So let me just show you one other thing. So this again is total just eyeballing. So just kind of do the best you can. So what I did was I took my oval and I put it on, let's see, we'll put this on. This is about the 1 3/4 inch line. And I just cut. So this will be the bottom here. So then what you can do is you can go ahead with your orange again and just sponge that part. And then I just cut a little strip off. So we'll say that's probably about a 1/2 inch or so. And I'm gonna go a little bit less. All right, and then I'm gonna take this once again and just sponge the rest of this a little bit. Okay, so I just sponged it. This piece you don't really need. I think my other one might have been a hair slimmer than this, but again, you're just eyeballing it because what you're going to do is we're going to layer this onto this oval, this here. So it kind of just gives you really like that little feeling of depth, and then this is going to go behind it. Okay, so if that makes sense. All right, so now the next thing you're going to do, and this is super technical, that's totally sarcastic in case you didn't get that, because you could do this several ways. So I have a paper piercer. You could do it with your paper piercer. If you were really concerned about precision, there probably is a very precise way that you could measure this out. But what I did was I originally made the holes really tiny, and I found that they were really too closely spaced. So what I did was I'm going to push in the center and kind of just move over. So that's probably about a 1/4 inch apart. And then same thing this way. And again, I'm trying not to be too close, but that's all I'm going to put here because this is going to be behind it, so you're not going to notice. Then I'm going to take this top one again. So same thing, I'm kind of starting in the center, moving about a 1/2 inch over. And this one I actually did all the way around. So same thing again, 1/2 inch. Most likely, I'm going to be honest, whoever you're going to give this to is going to be really impressed that you made them a Beatles Yellow Submarine card. So they're probably not going to care if your spacing isn't spaced properly. You're probably going to be the one that cares more about it. So don't be too hard on yourself. So then over here, I'm going to do the same thing. Start in the center. I find if you start in the center, it's easier to space them out a little bit better. And just 1/4 inches. You can press as hard as you want. If you don't necessarily want them to look so deep, you could just press them really lightly. Okay, but I gave mine to a newly 7-year-old boy, and he was completely thrilled with it. So that's what it looks like. So you have all your parts. As you can see there, they have all their, that's like the rivets. So then what we're going to do is now we're going to just assemble this. So this is pretty simple. So what I did was I did do my liquid glue, because I find that just in case you decide you want to wiggle it around a little bit, it gives you a little bit more freedom for that. So we'll put this here. Press. Oops. Have enough glue there. I'll put this up top. And again, the middle gap there is kind of just for you know, like spatial illusion, to just look like it's big, like it's got a lot of depth to it. And the other thing you can do is while you're working on that, you can set a punch on top of it. That way it can kind of hold those things together for you. In the meantime, I'm going to take just a little bit of liquid glue and put my, this way, my top of my periscope on. And what you could do if you want before you kind of get this glued down is you can just kind of nip off, because you're not going to want that hard corner up there. So just kind of nip that off like that. So there's your periscope portion. Other thing you're going to do, and this is, again, this is another thing that's kind of up to you, because I did it on the one, but I could see how it would be a little bit, especially now, because I should have done it ahead of time if I did it. So I'm going to tell you what you could do, but if you do this, you want to go back to where you were and start over again. I should say start over. You should do this before you assemble it. So we'll put our hearts in the center. Again, I'm just putting the same watercolor up so it kind of matches, but you could use any color hearts you wanted to. So what I did with this was I put one, and I kind of eyeballed it. I put one in the center and then one to each side. But you might decide, and I did this for one card, so it just kind of depends. You might decide that you want to outline these circles with punches as well. So if you do want to do the paper piercing around it, which it did really look cool, you definitely want to do that before you glue it to the second back piece, because it's a lot of pushing to get it through. And it almost felt like at times I was close to kind of ripping my paper. So I would say if you're going to do that, put the circles on first. And you can put your hearts on the circle, kind of decide where you think you want your circles to go, attach them, and then poke your holes on the top piece, and then put the rest of it together. So that would be my bit of advice. So I'm kind of just going for the center here, what I think is the center. And I'm kind of lining them up. Usually if you start with the center, you can make the rest of them a little bit even. And also the reason I use the Tombow liquid glue is because it does give you the maneuverability. If you decide you want to adjust them a little bit, you're able to. Okay, so now I'm going to put a little liquid glue on the back. Okay, and then we'll attach this. This is like the place where the Beatles or the navigator of the periscope would be hanging out. And while I'm at it, I'm going to put just a little bit of glue on here. The only thing that this is going to matter of adjusting is, that's why I have this little piece handy, just in case you want to put this here, you want to see how far you want it to stick up. So if you don't care that it hangs over this part, it's okay. If you want it to be like down a little bit lower, you could move it down, but you kind of want to have this piece handy, that way you know where you want to put it. So let's see, make sure that's straight. Looks pretty good. And I did put this on flat. So I just put basically liquid glue. Just like that. Oh, that was a lot. That's okay. I'll put a little bit here. That way that stays as well. Just have to be sure to wipe off my finger. And same thing again. You can set your punch on there once you get it where you want it. All right, so now we have that. So in the meantime, while this is sitting, I'm going to show you a couple other things I did. I had some of this left over, so I figured I would save some of it. But what I did was I stamped this in Coastal Cabana. And I did this a really, really fun way. So I'm going to do the your. So I'm going to cut this part off. So I stamped this and I'm going to cut it apart and kind of layer it on there. Because I think that looks super fun. And then I'm going to trim these 3 off. So I have they say it's your. And these are just barely still attached. Okay, they say it's your, and then what I'm going to do is I have another little strip of Whisper White here. So that one was from the other one that I have. And then I'm going to go ahead and just add this to a block. And just for a little bit of punch, I'm going to do this in red. So I just have basically just birthday is really all I want. So I'm trying to ink just that up. If for some reason doesn't work, you could also use your marker. I'm going to give that just a second to dry so it doesn't smear. But I'm going to trim out birthday. Okay, so there's that part. I also have, that's a scrap. So they, your, it's, do I have anything else here? Say. And now what I'm going to do is, I did this before the other day. What I did was I just used these little pieces, these little edge pieces here of the dimensionals. So I'm going to see if I can do that again today. What I did was I just pulled like these little pieces off and stuck them on the back for the small ones. And they're definitely big enough that they'll be okay. You could obviously use a little bit bigger of one on this longer piece if you want to. So I'll just use 2. One of them facing each other, or I'm just a little bit too lazy to reach on the other side of the room and grab my foam strips. I will tell you one thing though, if you're going to use dimensionals or foam strips, stick with one or the other because they do have different heights. So I'm going to just go ahead and snip one other one. That way we have birthday. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this out just a little bit. I'm going to cut this so it's pretty close. Same thing on the bottom. Okay, pop this on, just like that. Hopefully it's nice and dry. Okay, so what I did was I kind of just pieced these together. On here. It should be the they. Which I think this is awesome that we have this because it really ties the whole thing together, they say. I just don't want to touch that red one yet because I don't want to muck it up. There we go. So they say it's your birthday. So there's that part finished. And I thought I had a piece ready. And then what I did was I actually ended up putting this onto crushed curry because I think it really brought out the color of the yellow. So I'm going to put that on there. And something tells me this might be the tiniest bit off size. So let me just check. 5.5. I might have made that one down just a little. 4.25. Yep, I might have made this one just a little bit smaller. So you could use the largest. So if you use the largest stitched rectangle, it actually will fit perfectly. So this one is just a little bit smaller, but that's okay. I'm going to put this up here And I do realize that I have some ink up there, so we're just gonna, yeah, you know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this on. I'm gonna just slightly up center it. And the other thing you could do if you wanted to is you could stamp guitars all over the background if you do make a boo-boo, so don't worry about that. To press this down. Okay, so there's that. So if you do have the bigger, just this one step up bigger, which would be the biggest one, it's going to give you that really nice tight frame. So that's up to you if you want to do that as well. And then one other thing I did, and I'm just going to show you this. I'm not going to finish coloring it in. However, when I am done, I will post all the pictures to the blog. That way you can see what the full inside looks like. But what I did was I just took a scrap of Whisper White. So this should be, let me just make sure this one's trimmed down correctly. 5 1/4 by 4. That way you have a really nice layer. And what I did is I grabbed the guitars, and again, you can use like a mashup of guitars if you want. You could use all electric, all acoustic if you don't have whatever stamp set. I'm pretty sure almost everybody got this one because this was a really cool celebration set. A couple of them I kind of stamped off just like so. You could do the same thing with the headphones. So you can stamp the headphones on there as well. But I'm just going to stamp the other acoustic guitar. And then what I did was I just colored them in with the Stampin' blends. And then in the center is where I actually added the birthday greeting. And what I did was, where is it here? Is I just added time to celebrate. And then all you're going to do is color this in. And then you can put it right inside. And I guarantee they will love it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure that you do check out the blog so you can see the fully finished picture. If you have any questions, I always welcome questions via email. You can reach me at rachthestamper@gmail.com. Again, some of these supplies were retired, but everything else you can find in my online store, which is rachthestamper.stampinup.net. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.